Welcome to Your Brand Amplified, the podcast where we interview marketers, publicists, and brands to learn their stories, what makes them tick, and tips and tricks that make a difference. This is Your Brand Amplified. I'm Annika Jackson, and I am here with Ann Carden. Hailing from St. Louis, I am from Kansas originally, so I have a special place in my heart for all Midwesterners. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
You are a business growth expert, marketing and sales strategist, speaker, author, who's who in the world of coaches. So many things that you have done to figure out how to propel your own career forward and then help others. And I know this is something a lot of us have trouble with, and something I love to preach and talk about is how to establish who you are as an authority and how do you get your business to the next level. So I'm really excited to unpack some of this with you today. And of course, I'd love to start with your own journey.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for asking. My own journey, I came from corporate. I was 13 years in corporate business management, made a decision to leave that career and become a stay-at-home mom. And my husband's paycheck, the math didn't work. And so I started looking for a way to make some extra money. That turned into a business, full-blown global business that I did for 7 years. So that was over 30, I don't know, maybe 34 years now ago, and 5 businesses ago. So yeah, and then continued to build business. So I sold that after about 7 years. I was basically running a manufacturing company out of my home.
My gosh.
And shipping all over the world. And that was before the internet. So I had to do things the old-fashioned way. And then started a fitness business that turned into a large health club, a large weight loss center, and then opened 2 more in the recession and was able to sell all 5 of those businesses. But it is what brought me into coaching other people in business, just lots and lots of experience. And I worked with a business coach in my last 2 businesses. I was in a new market and I was just struggling to get that business as profitable as I wanted it to be. And I hired my first business coach. And that was such a game changer for me. She was also a brilliant marketer. That was such a game changer that I just knew that was going to be my next thing. Now that's been 14 years. I've been coaching for 14 years. So yeah.
Fabulous. How did you decide what businesses you wanted to go into after you left corporate?
I was looking for a way to make money, and there was not a lot of opportunity. We moved from California back to the Midwest, moved outside of a very small town. If I would have gone back into retail business management, which is what I was doing, I would have had to travel. We also only had 1 car at that time because my husband gave back a company vehicle when he left his job. And so here we are, we're out in the country. There's no opportunity. I think there was Walmart, which was a very small Walmart. And I just started a lot of prayer, to be honest, and just knew I had to do something to help my family. I've always been very creative and I've been very crafty. And I had a box of stuff that was sitting in my basement that were kind of some craft supplies. And I thought, okay, maybe I can make something out of this, and did, and took it to a little store. And of course, it didn't sell. And so I said, what's selling? She told me. Long story short, I started designing my own dolls. And that's what that business was. It was a doll business. And so then everything after that just sort of fell into place. Like when I sold that business, I gained a lot of weight and I didn't feel good about where I was. And I didn't know what my next step was going to be, but I knew I had to feel better and take better care of myself. And so I started on that journey. But then I fell in love with fitness and nutrition. I thought, so then I started looking for, okay, I think other moms would love to be able to work out and feel good. And so I went to a back to school barbecue and handed out flyers and said, okay, I think I'm going to do fitness classes at a community hall. Would you want to come take those with me? Well, again, long story short, that kept growing and growing until it turned into a full-blown 16,000 square foot health club with and just kind of kept expanding. So, I've always really come, except for the first business, although I should say I've always come from a place of service. Mm-hmm. So my first business, it was to serve my family. It was to help my family. The other businesses after that were to help other people. And so I've literally been coaching, even though I've only been business coaching for about 14 years. I've coached thousands and thousands of people in helping them change their lives through other means, through fitness, through weight loss. And then it's just been a natural progression. But when I went to college, I was going to be a teacher. So all of this I also won speech contests when I was a kid, and I always said I would write a book. And so it's really interesting. If I look back, I was even an entrepreneur like 8 years old. So selling craft classes to the neighborhood kids in my basement. So when I look at all these things, it just cultivated into what I do now. I'm so fortunate to get to do what I love and get to help people at the same time and have a very lucrative, successful business as a result.
Well, you are just such an inspiration. I think many of us have had that experience of having a corporate job, working for somebody else, taking some time off, particularly as women, to raise our families, and then going, okay, but I'm not really content just doing this, or I need to add money to the household income, or whatever our reasons are, figuring out how to be effective. And wow, you just blew it out of the water with both of you.
Well, I wish I would have had all the stuff available to do that. I couldn't even imagine if I would have had the internet or had a computer. I didn't even have a computer until I was, in my fourth business or whatever. So the fact that we have all of this available to us today is just mind blowing. But it's also, Anika, there are 1,000, I think the last numbers I saw, it was like 1,000 new millionaires in the United States every single day. Now, that is a result of what we have available to us today that we did not always have for many, many years. I mean, I didn't even think I knew a millionaire when I was building my first business, much less, now they're all around me. And so it's just interesting, the evolution of business and what is available today that just never was before. But I also will say this, it built a lot of resiliency in me. It wasn't easy. And even though there are different challenges today, I still think ultimately it's super easy to build a business today.
Well, I don't know how many people would say that it's super easy to build a business. So I'd love to unpack that with you. I also think I wanted to flag, it's interesting because with all the technology we have and all of the digital assets for marketing and PR and advertising, I feel like some of the old tactics are coming back around.
Yes, they are.
Mail. I love getting mail. It's so different than getting like, oh, I just got the 10th email from that person this week.
Yes.
Do I want to keep getting these emails, or do I have time to even look at this stuff? So I'd love for you to talk about how it's shifted, how it's helped your business, and also when you decided to sell your businesses and get into being a consultant and coach, what was that experience like for you? Was it harder to start and ramp up? Was it just as easy? I can tell that you have obviously a great way about you. You go get it, you know what you want, and you've been able to get people excited about what you're doing. And so I'd love to hear about that transition first, and then some of the things that you see different now versus when you were starting your other businesses.
Sure. So when I first decided that I was going to coach, I wanted to make sure that everything that I had learned and kind of cultivated along the way was going to transfer into other people's business. So I knew a lot of business owners. I was out there networking, and I was part of networking groups and things like that. And so I had made a lot of friends in business with my other businesses to promote my other businesses and basically get clients through the door. And when I decided, okay, I want to see if I can coach somebody, I actually reached out to a friend of mine that had a little retail store, and she was kind of struggling. And I said, I want to become a business coach, and I want to see if I can do this. Would you be my first client? And I didn't charge her very much. It was like $197 a month for 3 months for one-to-one coaching. But that being said, the very first week, I helped her run a 300% increase in her store, which was so unheard of. But I also had 13 years of retail management experience. And so but all that business experience just kind of came in. I was easily able to see what her issues were, what her problems were, and we were able to start putting different things in place. So that was the first client. The second client was a small photo booth company, and they were stuck. It was a partnership, and they were kind of stuck in the business, and the revenue was stuck. And she heard me speaking at a networking group, and she said, okay, we need you. And so once again, didn't charge a whole lot because I wanted to make sure I could do it. But in the very first hour, I sat down and I uncovered a $500,000 opportunity that they were completely missing out on. that didn't cost them a dime to implement. Like there was no overhead, there was no cost to implement it. They were just sort of focusing on what they thought was the big opportunity in the business, but it actually wasn't. And until they had somebody point that out to them, they didn't have any idea. So once I had those two clients, I'm like, okay, I know what I'm doing here. And so then, of course, I ramped up my fees and I just started working with people that I knew locally. But I also found doing that, I almost felt like I had created another job for myself. So I was running around to these business owners' businesses, coaching them on everything from their business to marketing to sales, which I do everything. I'm an A to Z coach. I don't necessarily work with startups so much, but I can. And I do everything from, okay, here's how you build a viable business, and then here's how you grow it and scale it. And everything, again, from the marketing. A lot of coaches don't do all of those pieces, and I do. So anyways, I would be in there working with them with whatever they needed. Like I didn't have any structured program. It was just, I'll help you with whatever. I mean, I can remember a client asking me about investments, and because I had done investing and I could help him. Yeah, this, you could do this, or this. And so it was a very interesting way to start the business. But I felt like I had created a job and I quickly knew this isn't what I'm loving. Like I love working with these clients, but this really isn't what I want. I don't want to be tied down anymore to a business because, 4 of those were brick and mortar. And even though I had teams and staff and they're running those, you're still tied to those. So I made the decision to come online, and then that was a whole different animal.
Oh, I'm sure.
So yeah, that's kind of how that all started.
Nice. And I think I was going to ask how you approach it, and you explained it a little bit that, we're nuts and bolts, like A to Z. And I do think that when people are looking at coaches and trying to find the right person for them, or consultants, there are a lot of business consultants who will say, this is the cookie cutter approach, and this is what you do to have the success that I have. I've been in those groups, I've been in those seminars, I've looked at all these materials, and maybe yes, but a lot of times it worked for that business, but it didn't necessarily work for other people. And they didn't do the test approach. They just said, oh, it worked for mine, so I'm going to sell this now as a system, right? So
You've definitely heard my story and my complaints about this, I'm sure. Go ahead.
So no, talk about that, because that's part of why you created a different type of coaching and consulting practice.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So when I came online, I hired an online coach because I didn't know what I was doing online and how to grow my business there. And he paid several $1,000s to this coach. And she said, well, you need a webinar. Now let's remember this was 14 years ago, and you need a webinar. And she even said at that time, I didn't even have a structured program because I was just helping people with whatever they needed. And so she said, you need to have some sort of a package program, like just selling business coaching for 90 days isn't going to cut it online. So I spent 90 days building out this program. And in the meantime, my business went to like 0 because I wasn't out looking for new clients. I wasn't out doing the things that had even made me income. And we ran a webinar. She helped me with the online piece, ran a webinar. And so for 90 days, the build up, right? Oh, this webinar. I get on there live. She must have been running some Facebook ads, I think, at that time. And we had 30 something people registered, which is just horrible, right? But like 4 showed up. And so out of those, I sold a $600 program, and I had to convince the guy to become a client. That's how bad it was. So that was my first experience online. And I thought,
that is
okay, I might have to go back to working with clients locally, right? But I was really determined. So I invested in a lot of different things. And I went down the rabbit holes that I see other people go down. So lots of things that I invested in. Cookie cutter programs. I say piecemealing your business together. That's what I was trying to do. Piecemealing my business together with what I thought I needed next. Instead of finding a coach that said, wow, Ann, you have 40 years of business marketing and sales experience. Let's figure out how we can unpack that and repackage that so that you can get paid big fees.
Right.
And I could never find anyone that could do that. So I kept going down the wrong path, only to find out. I remember investing was over $10,000, I think, in one program. And they said, well, your clients are on Facebook. And I was still working with small business owners, but I was sort of in the contractor space. And I had worked with a lot of contracting kind of businesses. And I said, well, I'm not sure that these people are online. Oh, yes, they are. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. So I did the whole Facebook thing, invested over, $10,000 into this program, only to find out, well, the startup contractors were on Facebook. And the big contracting companies had Facebook pages, but the owners weren't there. And I was working with owners. So only to find out that didn't work. And then just many, many things I invested in. I joined a coaching organization and they had a lot of great materials, a lot of great bells and whistles. I thought, oh, this is the ticket. I'll just do this. But then what I found is that I wasn't really a business coach. I was a marketing coach. Really? And they couldn't even help me with some of the things that were missing in their program. It was like, okay, I am so over this. I just took a step back at that point and I said, I was bringing in a lot of the wrong clients that weren't paying me very much. And so I finally just said, I'm just not loving this. I know I have more value to bring to my clients. I don't want to do a 90-day program, send them on their way to watch them piecemeal their business when I know I can do everything. I don't want to work with clients that aren't ready for my services. I want to work with people that they're in the right mindset, that they want to really grow a successful business. They're willing to invest. They know that it is an investment into their success to get a return. And so I'm looking for those people. And then through the coaching organization, it was all business coaches. I found a way to, when I took a step back and I started getting really high-end clients and I really niched myself and started speaking on stages and started getting clients that way. And then I found coaches and consultants coming to me while really the company was kind of promoting me on their calls and ask, here's what Anne's doing so that they could emulate it or basically copy what I was doing, except that they weren't having success. And the reason they weren't having success is because many of them didn't have that kind of expertise. And so when they came to me, they would say, Anne, we just can't get this going. We're using all their stuff. We're doing all their things. And I would say, well, what was your background? What was your expertise? And it would be something completely opposite of what this company was trying to teach them to do. I said, well, there's your problem. Your background was in finance. An example, why would you be trying to sell people marketing? Why would you be trying to sell people this when your background, let's package that. And that's how I fell into working with coaches and consultants. And that's where my expert in you method came from. It's like, let's take what you're genius at and let's package that, but let's not take you down the road everyone else is teaching. Sell a little bitty low ticket item and then scale up the client. No, let's go right to the top. Let's get the $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 plus clients. And then everything else is a downsell. So that little bitty low ticket item, you may never get to it. Like you may never even need to do that in your business. And that's where my whole method came from. It worked for me. It's worked for so many other people. And to me, it's just a better path. And it's a lot more fun.
It's so interesting because that is exactly the opposite of even today you hear, start with low ticket item and then you stop and you do the webinar and maybe you charge a little bit for the webinar and then you get people in. And number one, I don't think it feels authentic to a lot of people, whether it's the person doing it or the person hearing it. Like they want the knowledge, but still there's a lot of, I think, disconnect. Method or have a Facebook group. Everybody has to have a Facebook group. Well, I'm in 5 million Facebook groups. I don't even know how many I got, some of them. And I also have a job, so I don't have time to go in the Facebook groups all day to get that information. So I love that you've changed the narrative on this.
Yes.
I can also tell you're a very straight shooter when you work with clients and you're not going to miss what's going to work for them or what's not.
I even say, if you don't like bold, if you don't want me to tell you the truth, you're not going to like working with me because I don't sugarcoat things. Yeah, I just don't feel like all that fluff and everything helps people. Well, I think that there is a lot of fluff out there. And for most people, I think the thing that's so frustrating for me, Anika, and the thing that is really heartbreaking for me, I can remember I did a presentation to a Facebook group one day, and it was hundreds of thousands of women that were in the group. And someone reached out to me after, and she said, Anne, I wish I would have found you 3 years ago, because she liked what I was talking about taking your expertise and really, figuring out how to build a business around that. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, I've gone broke in this industry. I've sold my house. And she had this sob story. It broke my heart. And that's what happens. And I said, well, what was your background? And she said, well, I have a PhD in technology. And I thought, oh my gosh, you have a PhD in technology and you're in there selling something for $97. Like, it was heartbreaking to me. And I just thought, I can't teach that method to people. I just can't. The thing is, when you have all that expertise and career collateral and all of those things, you don't need to start out there. People are looking for you. People are looking for people with real expertise and authority. They're just not finding them in most cases, or they don't know about you, or you don't have things packaged where they can clearly see that you are the person for them. So it's been an interesting journey.
What I find interesting is even people who are not in the consultant or coach world, a lot of times have trouble accepting that they have to work to show people who they are. It's not a world where you can just hang your shingle. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. You have to let people know about what you do.
Yes.
So they can find you and know that you're the right person for them to work with. And so
it's never been that way, Anika. I mean, even when I started my other businesses, I said I went to the school and handed out flyers, right? And asked moms to take fitness classes. You've always had to get out there and get visible and get your clients through the door and then treat them right and do a good job with them so that word of mouth could spread. But then you had to advertise. There's no free ride. You have to do the work.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't understand that still or get frustrated by the process. But I'd love for you to talk a little bit about who you work with, that they have to be ready, they have to be willing to invest. So what does that look like? Is it a program that they go through? I know you have some workshops. Do you work one-on-one with people? What's kind of your sweet spot now after you've built up all of this time and expertise and been able to show that these don't just work for you, but these work repeatedly for all of your clients and customers?
Yes. So it really depends on where they come to me in their business. So if they're in a place where they can go into, so I have a mastermind called 350K Momentum Mastermind, and that's somebody trying to scale to that 350 or beyond. And they like what I'm talking about with high-end clients and services. And so that's one program, but everything that I do is at a very high level. So it's very high touch. I only take 6 per group. So it is a combination. It's a hybrid of 1-to-1. And then you also get the camaraderie of the group, and it's very high touch. So it's not, I don't make you go watch a whole bunch of videos and then figure it out. I am in the weeds with you, guiding and supporting you. And I am a customized coach. So even if you're in my mastermind, you're going to get a customized approach that is going to be different from maybe other people in the group. Yet everyone's trying to do the same thing. So they're all looking for the same outcome, but the way they get there might be very different. Well, so for someone, building a Facebook group might be the right thing, although I'll tell you, for most of my clients, it's not. Most of my clients, it's speaking, podcasting, LinkedIn, virtual events, live events. Those are the ways that we're media. Those are the ways that we're doing it. But I'm going to look at who are you trying to reach and what is going to be the best way for you to bring those clients in. And then how do we need to package and structure what you're selling? Because in most cases, we have to redesign their revenue model so that they can make faster leaps. They can get better clients. A good example of this, I have a client right now. When she came to me, she was just charging a few $1,000s. And now she's getting $40,000 plus clients. Wow. And it's because she didn't know how to put her expertise together. Like, again, she looked for coaches that could help her do this, but she couldn't find any. She came into one of my 3-day virtual workshops. She was invited. She saw the post on LinkedIn, reached out. She was in the right place, came in. And in that, I was showing people how to package. And she said, I never have seen somebody that could help me put all of my expertise into one thing. And so, now she's getting paid really well for what she does. And so I use a customized approach and very, very high touch. Big group programs where they're charging you multiple 5 figures. Most people fall through the cracks. This is just my feeling. I know I teach scaling, but with integrity. If you have to send in your question to get help, that's a big indication you're probably not a great program. Because, I guess there's pros and cons. Yes, you can learn from the other people, but nothing is more frustrating to me than you're actually getting coached by other people in the group. Versus the person that you're actually spending the money with. I just think there's something really out of integrity with that. It really bothers me. To me, that nothing screams, I want money more than that. And the thing is, I think you can do both. When you're doing it with real value and you're doing it in integrity, you can have a really lucrative business and you can still really give people what they are paying for. That's just me. That's how I do things.
No, that's really cool. Are you ready to take your brand to new heights? Join the Brand Amplifier for Entrepreneurs program. Learn how to build, elevate, and amplify your brand with a comprehensive 10-module course. Learn more about it and other ways to implement our strategies at fullcapacitymarketing.com. Click on EFCM Learning Hub for more information. Can't wait to help you amplify your brand. What do you consider, because I know the audience, I'm sure, has different ideas of what would be a high ticket offer. So do you have a definition of that? Is it different depending on what industry they're in?
It's going to be different. So I don't even like to use the word high ticket anymore because it's so overused. In fact, my book is written around high ticket. I'm like, I need to go back and change that. Now I say like ultra high ticket or higher paying, getting close higher paying clients and sell higher paying or higher end programs. But high ticket for most people, they're going to say 2,000, 5,000, maybe 10,000 is what a lot of people would consider high ticket. I would say something like 10,000 for maybe 45 days or 10,000 on the front end. That's what you get paid in cash and then everything else. And then you have a back end. So typically when I'm working with clients, we're looking more around, it could be 15,000 in upfront cash for a short upfront engagement. And then maybe several $1,000s a month on the back end. $25,000 is a great program amount, or $30,000. Most of my clients can fall into at least that range as their minimum program. So it's more the $25,000 and up. But I've had clients sell $200,000 programs. I just had a client close $150,000, and he's brand new, but he's not brand new to his expertise. But he's brand new to his coaching and consulting, but he closed $150,000 with one client and he still has more to go with them. So it's really knowing how to put those pieces together.
And I feel like that's a lot of the issue, especially when you're starting out. I mean, even you said it yourself, when you started, you tested the model, you didn't charge very much for the coaching. And then as soon as you knew that this worked, you were able to increase your prices. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. I want to work with these people, and I know they don't have big budgets because maybe they have a approval process in their company or they're starting out, as you said, the startup entrepreneurs and startup businesses. So how do you help people shift their minds? And is that part of, because I know you also have a free mastermind people can look at, you have coaching, and then you have a few books as well. So
yes.
If you can talk a little bit about that and where in your sphere, I guess, can we find that information? Like, should we go to your book? Should we look on your website, sign up for a mastermind? If somebody's...
First of all, if you go to my website at annlcarden.com, I have a lot of free resources, how to build a $500,000 coaching and consulting business.
Wow.
And it's an older set of videos. It's like 4 10-minute videos. I created those years ago, but they're still pretty viable. I have probably some better things out there now, but that's the basics. My book is a good blueprint for people to get started. And, I also do VIP days with people. I do work with people one-to-one. It really depends on what they need and where they are in their business. So yes, I still love to work with one-to-one clients, but I don't have any really low-end programs. I am turning my book into a course, and I have a company working on that for me because I don't want to do it. But I am turning that into a course. But outside of that, I have a lot of free resources. I have a robust YouTube channel that is loaded, but I'm always running events. I run virtual events. That's a big way that I get a lot of my clients. And those are free. We do vet the room. We make sure that the right people are in the room. But I go deep into there's a transformation. I've had people leave my free virtual workshops and go out and close a $36,000 client, in just a couple of weeks, or make more money the next day. So I give real value in those, which I think in a lot of events you don't. People don't get real value. They get kind of high level stuff.
Right.
My goal is for you to see what it's like to work with me and then lead you into want to work with me. And so that's the whole purpose. But even if you don't work with me or you decide not to, I want you to walk away and go, that was the best thing I've ever, like if I've had people go, and you could charge for those. And I think you brought that up earlier. You said something about charging low fees for workshops and things like that. Here's why I don't love that model, because it doesn't pull the right people into the room.
Okay.
I invest in a lot of $200 things, a ton of them, even $1,000 things. It doesn't mean I'll ever be that person's client. I invest to learn something that I maybe don't know, or to learn something that sounds different, or to learn from them. So I use it as education. Well, those are not the people I want in my workshops. I want people that want to become clients, right? And so that's when you're selling low ticket like that, or even letting anybody buy into your workshops, into your events, that's a volume thing. You're not necessarily getting the right people in the room. So when I do virtual events, for example, I typically have a 50 or 60% close in those events. And I do it with a handful of clients. I don't have hundreds of people, because we vet the room. We make sure the right people are in there who really want what we're doing and what we're talking about, but they're also ready to grow and go to the next level. So it's a vetting process, and we keep the room at a really high level. And, so it's a different process from what most people are out there teaching and doing.
It absolutely is. What are some of the mistakes that you see people make? If there are some general things that you see people do that you're like, oh gosh, no, this is something that needs to be course corrected immediately.
One thing that I really do, I'm getting ready to kind of maybe do something around this, like step into the spotlight, step into the expert spotlight, because everything I do with my clients is about helping them build their visibility, get online. I think you said it earlier, your online presence, it's non-negotiable. If you were going to be in business, you absolutely should be positioned and seen online, because even if you're meeting people offline, they will Google you. They will go look at what you're all about. And if they can't see that, or there's incongruency in your marketing, your platforms, all of those things, it discredits you. It actually will hurt you. And so people are probably losing a lot of business behind their back that they are not even aware of. So one of the first things, if you're going to get high level clients like I teach, they have to be seen as an expert and authority. There's no way around it. And for some, that might be new for them. Like one of my clients, she's only ever worked with partnerships. Now she's building her own side of her practice with all of her expertise. And so she's had to step into the spotlight, and she has had to use the strategies. So those are the mistakes that I see. Two mistakes. They're either trying to go the low end route, like I talked about, selling something low ticket, the volume method. That is such a mistake for people. Most people burn out or go broke before they really get that kind of a business off the ground. Not working around their expertise, falling into the cookie cutter programs. That's big mistake number 2. And then big mistake number 3 is not really realizing the value of building their online brand and powering that up. That's the long game too. It's not just for your short game, but it's also for your long game if you're going to be around for any length of time.
That is something that I see in the world of PR time and time again, or even when I'm working with somebody on PR, but I talked to them about your strategy overall isn't integrated.
Right.
I'm selling you as this, that, the other, but if somebody goes to your website or your social media, they might not be getting the same message.
Right.
And it's a real issue, because it could be a client, a customer, a partner, a sponsor, an investor, or it could be a journalist.
Yes.
And all of those audiences, if you're not showing up online, like you said, you're not going to get the results that you want.
And yes, you're missing out. Whether you know it or not, you are.
And that's something that you had mentioned, is showing up on LinkedIn, make podcasts, different platforms. So what are you seeing as missed opportunities? I know like LinkedIn, I think it's the biggest social media win people could utilize these days, but I think
it's a gold mine. It is a gold mine. Yes. Yeah. I think a lot of people don't necessarily know how to use LinkedIn in the right way, and they're not using it along with other strategies. So there's a lot of ways to use LinkedIn. The first thing is you absolutely should be there. I don't care if you don't play there or not, you should be there. It is a free digital asset to your business. It shows up at the top of Google. optimize that LinkedIn profile and let people see what you're all about. And also this, I think it was something like over 70% of people surveyed said they would trust a brand more if they were on LinkedIn.
Wow.
And Fortune 500 companies, all the Fortune companies, Fortune 100 companies, they're all on LinkedIn. And so if you're going to do any kind of bigger game, you need to be on LinkedIn. So that's the first thing. But a lot of people don't use LinkedIn with other strategies. So for example, I use LinkedIn in multiple ways. I do live streams and I drive them to my workshops. I do connect with people that are in my network and have conversations with them and drive them to my workshops or invite them to live streams. I get on podcasts through LinkedIn. I invite people to my podcast through LinkedIn. I get chosen as a speaker through LinkedIn. So there's lots and lots of ways to use it. And a lot of people just don't really have the fundamentals dialed in, or they don't really know how to use it. So they sort of show up and they just try to spam everybody. And I did that. I want you to know I am in full transparency here. When I first got on LinkedIn, I was taught that. And I hired marketers to do all that for me. But I didn't have the fundamentals in place. I didn't even really know who I was going to work with at that point. And so all of that just burned up money. It just burned up money. It was not the right thing. The other thing with LinkedIn is you can test your market on LinkedIn. So if I'm doing a live stream and I'm inviting a lot of people to that live stream that I think, oh, they're going to love this, but the title doesn't pull them, I have just tested my market and I realize, oh yeah, this isn't something I need to keep pushing or promoting, right? And so you can go a different direction. You can also reach out to people and ask them, what are your challenges? Or how do you feel about this? I've helped people. I think about one of my clients coming from corporate. She was in tech. She was a VP for tech in a big company and she wanted to start a consulting business. And so we put all her stuff together. And I said, okay, now I want you to go reach out to the CEOs and the people that you know and ask them what they think about this. And would it be something that they could see people investing in? Well, she had a waiting list before she launched.
Oh my gosh.
Just that. So, but it was a great way to test. But we also did it with people we knew could potentially hire her. But you can't do that on any other platform. And you can target on LinkedIn like no other platform either. You can target by, job title. You can target by company, by how many people are in the company. There's no other platform out there where you can get that specific on your marketing targets. So, oh my gosh, it is just a gold mine when you know how to use it.
Fantastic. Well, let's talk about podcasting too. You have a podcast. Which came first, the podcast or the book? So I want to talk about both of those. And I love the fact that you are turning your book into a course now. I want to hear on the book side, what prompted you to write the book and put your knowledge into the book? And then on the podcast side, when did you start your podcast journey as a podcast host? And how has that also helped? Because I know some people have podcasts for educational purposes, informational. Some use them as funnels. So I'd love to unpack some of that with you as well.
Yes. So I started my podcast originally, like a lot of people do. Let me build my brand. So there was no real strategy. I thought I knew who I wanted to have on there. And I wanted to just to be seen. I'm not really like awareness marketing. I think it should always be direct response marketing. But when I started my podcast, my idea was, okay, I'm going to build awareness. People will see that I know what I'm doing as a business coach. And I'll get clients that way. But as I got into it, I realized this is not working. It is building, it is getting out there. People are seeing me and all those things. But I realized I had to have a more dialed in strategy. Now I teach people how to get clients from podcasting and also from being a guest on podcasts. So it's a big piece of a strategy that I teach my clients.
Okay.
And I call it part of my interview strategy, but you can also get it from guesting. I close big clients from being a guest on their podcast. So it's a whole thing. But I've been doing it for over 3 years. But, full transparency, when I couldn't get things to work the way I wanted them to work with my podcast, I hired some really high-end coaches to help me close the gaps. So one coach in particular, $30,000 to help me close some gaps in the podcast. But guess what? I now have a strategy that works and I get to teach it to my clients. So I've closed those gaps for my clients as well. But the podcast came first. And then when I decided to write the book, I wrote out of frustration. When I took a step back, I created my Expert in You method. It worked for me. Like my business quickly went into multiple six figures practically overnight when I figured out my process and flipped all of that, kind of flipped that value ladder on its head, I like to say. And then when I started doing it with other people, like I had a client that she was kind of stuck under that six figures, and we were able to get her to over 300,000 in 5 months. And I didn't even have the strategies that I have now.
Wow.
That was, a few years ago. So when I wrote the book, I wrote it out of frustration because I wanted to show people a better way. I wanted to show people that really had some expertise and some brilliance, how to not go down all the rabbit holes that I went down.
Right.
I mean, Anika, I've probably invested hundreds of thousands of dollars to learn what I've learned in this industry. And a lot of that, I never say anything was a mistake. I always learned something from it. But had I figured some of this out earlier, I wouldn't have had to invest that much money. It's like now I really, truly am a shortcut for people. Yeah. They don't have to do that. But so if you read even the first chapter of the book, I talk about the frustration. I think it starts out like, oh, the coaching and consulting life. That should tell you something, right? So the book came next, and then I rebranded my podcast. So once I did the book, I wanted everything to be more congruent. And I shifted my podcast to be Expert in You. And so my whole brand now, you can see it behind me, is Expert in You. And then everything was more congruent. So that was sort of how that all evolved.
Oh, fantastic. So what's next for you? You have your podcast, you have your book, you're turning your book into a course, you have your workshops, you have your coaching.
I am just loving what I am doing. I want to keep doing what I'm doing until I don't want to do it anymore. And, I'm always someone that just keeps growing and learning, and I will never stop doing that. That's just in my DNA. So truthfully, I want to just continue what I'm doing, but I'm also at an age now where my freedom is really important to me. I have grandkids and I love to travel. And so I have to have a business that works in my life. And that's the thing that I also teach people is you don't want your business running your life. You want your business built around your life. And so one of the things I do is I take a look at that with people. What do you want your life to look like? How do you want to work? Just like I figured out, I don't want to be running around to people's businesses and coaching them in their office. I don't want that, right? And so that's a really important piece as you're growing and scaling, because there comes a point where money's not everything. Mm-hmm. And you'll get to a place in your business where you know how to make money. It's predictable. It's consistent. It's not everything. And now you have to figure out, or now you have to realize that there's more. And so that's always the place that I love to help people get to. It's like the client I was telling you, we were able to get her over 300,000. Her goal was 300, and we were able to get her over that in 5 months. And she bought her dream home. That was part of her goal, is to buy her dream home. And once she learned the pieces she was missing and she figured out, wow, this is really rinse and repeat. I can do this over and over again. I can keep growing this. It shifted everything in her life. And so, she could go and do that. So my goal is to not just help you get short-term wins, but it is to help you build a sustainable, successful business long game. And that's different from what most people are out there teaching.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think it's the bad part, of also the digital age that we live in, right?
It is.
Instant gratification. You can look stuff up and you think you're the expert right away.
Yes.
But to create that longevity, that creates peace and in a foundation that actually lets you go further and be freer.
And it's important to know, too, that things are always evolving in business. So, even what worked 5 years ago is not necessarily working now. And you said at the very beginning, direct mail's coming back around. Yes, it is, because everybody has gone to digital. And now direct mail, you can get a lot of eyeballs on direct mail. And so, yes, all of those things, it's really important to also know what's happening in the industry and how to evolve in that way. Right now, it's so competitive. I hear this over and over. It's so competitive. I go, not when you play at the top. It's not. Whoa. When you're playing at the top of the market, it's not busy. It's not crowded. I only know a couple of other coaches that even work with the level of clients that we work with. And we're all very different in our niche. In fact, one of them I'm really good friends with. But what she does is, even though she helps people get really high-end clients, she works in a specific niche. And what I do is I don't just help them get those clients, but then I can help them scale. And she doesn't do that. I shouldn't say she doesn't help them scale, not in the same way. I help them run events and things like that. She doesn't do any of that. So we're very different. But when you're down here in the mainstream, oh my gosh, it's like shark-infested waters. And it's why people struggle so much. And they just keep lowering their prices. I just saw something come through today from somebody that I've looked up to, and I thought, wow, he's such a guru. And now he's selling something for $297. He's like, this was $3,000, now it's $297. And I thought, I know you're great at what you do, and he really is, but you just lowered the value of you. And you have to pick a lane, in my opinion. If you're going to be high end, be high end.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you just end up playing that pricing game. And that's a dangerous place to be.
It really is. It really is. And like I said before, I think a lot of people get stuck in that because they want help. You talked about being of service and service-minded. And I think a lot of people interpret that as, well, I have to keep my prices at a certain place, or I have to accept that that's all they have, that somebody can pay me to invest in their business. And so you're really talking about, and hopefully everybody who's listening, because you're certainly helping me think about, how do we reframe and elevate ourselves and know and understand our value and what we have to offer.
Yes. And it all really does come down to how you put the pieces together and the market that you go after. Look, if you go after a broke market, you're not going to make any money, right? But there is money in every market. I mean, you could pick any niche out there and you can play in the top 20% if you're good at what you do. Now, that is a prerequisite. You do have to be good at what you do, right? You cannot get those high fees, but it's really interesting, Anika, because, I'm in a lot of Facebook groups and I've been out there online in a very long time. And I will hear coaches say, greedy coaches that are charging premium high fees. There's nothing greedier. And I have rebutted that. And I said, as long as you're given the value, as long as the value is there, I said, to me, there is nothing greedier than someone that is trying to get thousands of people into their $30 thing. That is nothing but money driven. I don't care what anyone says. I will stand behind that all day long. Push back to the industry. That is total money. But if I can help somebody bring in I've helped people bring in $50,000 client in a week of working with me. If I can do that with one client, do I deserve to get paid what has taken me many, many years and hundreds of thousands of dollars of investing to learn? I believe I do. And that's the way I look at it. And that's also the way I teach my clients to look at it. You had talked about mindset. I actually don't have people trouble shifting their mindset when I show them why what we're doing is worth what we're charging. When I walk them through the process that I walk them through, it blows their mind. They're like, oh my gosh, I've been leaving all this money on the table. And then they close the first big client. They're like, I am kicking myself when I look at all the time that I was giving this away. And so it's just because they don't know how. When I closed my first $30,000 client, I hired a $30,000 coach to teach me how to do that. But I still wasn't sure. And I have to say, he wasn't really that great at helping me step into my value for that. But I ended up doing it anyway. He just gave me the boldness, I think, more than anything. But when I closed my first $30,000 client and got a taste of that, I was like, now I have programs that are less than that. I don't want to scare people off. But my point being, when I got a taste of that and I felt like I really deserved every penny because she was already burning up more money than that. She was already wasting that much. All of a sudden, everything shifted in the way I was thinking about it. And so I never dreamed I would be helping people do that. I remember one of my first coaches said, if you don't have a $50,000 offer, you can't sell it. And I thought, $50,000, what would I sell? But now, I mean, that's almost so normal for a lot of my clients. Like that's almost a starting point for a lot of my clients. So it's really funny that I'm doing that with people now.
Yeah. Well, this has been really inspirational. I'm excited to find the time to download some of your resources and watch some of your videos and YouTube and all of that. What is the best way for the audience to find you and follow you?
Yes, you can absolutely go to my website. I mentioned it earlier at annlcarden.com. Lots of resources. I'm on YouTube. I do LinkedIn Live. I'm on Facebook. So any of those resources. If you want to, though, if anything that I said resonates, I am always running a 2-day virtual workshop. I almost always have one going with some kind of a topic. So you can go to expertinyouworkshop.com and you can see what the topic is. And if it's a fit, you can apply to come to that workshop. And that's how I get clients. And I also love that. I love teaching and pouring back into people and being of service. So that's one of my primary ways to do that. But
fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Anne. And
thank you.
Last couple questions. Do you have any last words of advice you want to leave the audience with? This is my first one. And then my second one is, do you have a favorite quote or mantra?
Yes. Last word of advice is hire a coach that knows business, marketing, sales, A to Z. Stop piecemealing. If you are doing that, in the long run, you're spending way more money than you will need to if you just, have somebody that can help you with all the pieces. So that would be one thing, is stop piecemealing your business. Look for somebody that can customize an approach for you. That's going to be your faster path and honestly, your cheaper path. The second thing is I have a mantra that I say, always keep raising your bar. You always have a next level. Never settle. There's always more.
And I can't think of better advice for all of us to internalize and to act upon. So
thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. This was such a pleasure. The joy,
my pleasure,
excitement, and the experience that you have has been really valuable, I know, for me and for the audience. And to the audience, thank you for listening or watching another episode of Your Brand Amplified. I'll be back again in a few days with another amazing expert. Want more? Check out amplifywithannika.com or follow me on socials at amplifywithannika.